million organization in 2019 to already having nearly $11.5 million in sales to date in 2020. Kristen Wyranga is going to share with you the steps she's taken specifically in the last year to develop habits in her business and in her personal life to help her find continued growth and success, to drive momentum in her business and organization, and reach for bigger goals and bigger dreams. Kristen, take it away.
Yeah, thank you so much, Stacia. Today, we're going to dive into how to create systems and scalability in your business, along with how to have the habits and hustle to get it done. So let's start with systems. Oftentimes, when we create our systems or tweak old systems, we create them to serve us at this moment in time, to meet our needs where we are currently. We have a desired outcome that we want to reach in our business, but rather than anticipating our future needs for those systems, we adjust or create them to fit them for the here and the now. Instead, we should be looking at how we can create a system that will allow for growth within it. So what I mean by that, and you can see this in the chart here, is that this system, this way of doing things, will it allow me to scale? Will it allow me to put hundreds of recruits through it on a promotion month, for example? Will it be conducive to having 30 first generation directors instead of 6, 9, or 12? So build your systems for growth, not for maintaining where you are right now. And anytime we experience rapid growth, either through a recruiting promotion or like earlier this year with COVID growth, right? We experience growth that outpaces our systems, like shown on the chart. And when this happens, it can lead to stress, overwhelm, burnout, playing catch up, and being reactive versus proactive. An example that I experienced this was actually back in the fall when we experienced a huge influx of new consultants. And I realized that my new consultant onboarding system was not built for large influxes. So when we experienced them, it put a lot of strain on my system. And that overspilled into other areas of my business because I was putting so much time into onboarding with a system that couldn't handle the number of consultants our team was signing up, which then meant I couldn't put time into other aspects of my business that needed it too. Does that sound familiar? The question then became for me, how can I build systems that will allow for room for growth? I reflected on what habits did I need to have in place to sustain the growth, and also how could I align my systems to create room for the continued growth, which would also allow us to continue to scale and not feel like we were always playing catch up. When thinking about how to actually apply this for you guys, think about your ultimate goal, your ultimate desired outcome. How many would you have on your personal team? How many directors would you promote every year? How many first generation directors would you have? How many recruits would come in consistently each month for you? This is pie in the sky thinking here, you guys. Like, think big. Then create your system to fit that goal. For example, one of my personal goals is to have 100 first generation directors. Now that might sound crazy, lofty, pie in the sky goal, but why not, right? Okay, why not allow myself to dream big and want that for our team? So then I need to build my systems around first generation director promotion, how to support them, and around the notion that I have 100 of them versus building the system for how many directors I have right now. As we talk about systems, it's really important to know that your systems are a strong foundation for your business. You want to build that foundation. Our systems create our habits and our routines that we practice day in and day out. Systems such as, you can see them on the screen here, my personal business systems. We have them for booking, for host coaching, for selling, running our parties, and recruiting. And then moving over to like the team systems, we have personal team support, new consultant onboarding, director bound, some programs to work with our aspiring leaders, new director onboarding, fostering and developing first generation director team, director team support, maybe that's more org-wide, and senior and executive director bound, and that's working with directors who want to move through the career plan. These are examples of my systems. And while it may sound like a lot, the goal with each one is that it runs like a well-oiled machine and it serves a purpose. It serves to help us create habits in that department, and those habits produce results. Now, one quick word about systems. You need to find what's going to work best for you, because this is not a one size fits all. Work with your upline and or your close peers to decide which systems you want or need, and then create a set of tasks and habits within them. And one great thing about this business is that we have the freedom to create. And instead of copying and pasting someone else's system, I really encourage you to not doubt yourself on the fact that you can come up with a system that works well. Have that faith and belief that you do have the skills to create your own. Some systems are larger and more intricate than others, and some of these systems I added where and when I saw the need. So for example, new directors would promote, and I needed something that gave them the tools they needed to start off strong as a new director. I needed a system I followed that told me what to do, so I knew I was giving them what they needed, when they needed it, and I didn't have to be fumbling around trying to play catch up. I could go straight to the to-dos built into the system for what comes next. So when you think about systems overall, the key is to think about how things funnel into your organization. So you have new consultants coming in, and they receive your new consultant onboarding. And you're going to see on the next slide here this exact same thing. They go either one of two ways after they go through your new consultant onboarding, either into your aspiring leader or director bound system, or if they don't want that, they go into your ongoing support system. Same thing with a new director. They come in, they get your onboarding for new directors, then they either go into the career plan advancement system for those who want more. Hopefully all of them go there, right? And if not, they go into your ongoing support system. This is like a funnel, and when you get it set up to work properly, it will run like a well-oiled machine for you. Also, look at who your systems serve. As you grow, you simply cannot serve your entire organization. To grow and scale, you must become duplicatable. In order to do that, you foster, develop, and serve your personal business, your personal team, and your first generation. You enable and empower your leaders in your first gen to work with their leaders. This is how you scale. Earlier this year, I realized I needed to develop priorities on who I spent my time with. Where should I be investing my time so that it was being used in the best place possible with the most effective outcome? So, for example, if I had a soon-to-be aspiring second-generation leader that needed help and a brand new first-generation director who could fast-track by developing their first leader, and they had a strong candidate in place and ready for that, and my personal team also needed more recruits, how do I prioritize those things? So number one, priority would be recruiting more into my personal team. This has to come first. Number two, help my first generation director hit advanced director. Especially because they're so new, I prioritize working with them first. I work with them directly, and they work with their aspiring leader directly. I am not working directly with their aspiring leader, okay? They are, but I work through them. And then number three, I do not work directly with the aspiring second generation director, but rather I work with their director to help them. I work through my first gen so that they are working with their second gen. There are special circumstances to this, like for example, if a first generation leader is not working their business at all whatsoever. However, your personal team and your personal recruiting always come first, followed by investing in your first generation directors. Working with every generation is not scalable, and it detracts from your personal business. When you take care of your personal recruiting and your personal team, and when you focus on developing your first generation leaders, all the other generations will fall into place. As we talk about systems and having systems that run smoothly, you can begin to delegate specific tasks within these systems. I've delegated out many tasks to an assistant. In fact, I have 4. I waited far too long to hire help, but by doing so, it has ensured my time is spent on income producing activities like recruiting, onboarding, developing leaders, etc. So many of the mundane tasks that don't require me or my personality, I've delegated to assistants. Examples of tasks are things like setting up parties in Consultant's Corner, setting up Post My Party, closing parties, etc. One thing that helped me when I was trying to think about what tasks to assign to an assistant or to multiple assistants are to think about your business in departments. Like we have a party department, we have a director bound department, we have a social media department, etc. So if you think about the various departments that you have, which also sometimes coincide with your systems, you can have your assistant be in charge of that department or certain tasks within each department. Okay, I want to move into talking about automation for a few minutes. It can be challenging to automate sometimes in our business because it feels like we become separated from the particular task or system when we automate it. It can feel like we are not as closely connected with that aspect of our business. It can also feel like we remove some aspects of relationship creating and relationship building out of our business. Oftentimes there's a resistance to automate for all of those reasons and more. But what we have to remember is that if we automate in some aspects of our business, it creates time freedom for us to invest in new areas of our business. A resistance to automation can actually prohibit us from achieving our ultimate pie in the sky desired outcome. There are only so many hours in the day, and it always seems like there's more we wish we could do. So take a look at this graph. By automating things that we manually administer now, we actually create more time in our schedule to do the extra things we would like to do, to build deeper relationships, to create the programs and new systems we desire, but we haven't found the time to do. And then ultimately what happens? We can do more. Our output increases, our results increase, and we get that much closer to our desired outcome. When I was thinking about how to save time and trying to figure out what to automate, I identified the 3 top areas that took the most time in my schedule each day and week, and I listed them out with the most time consuming. So I want to ask you guys, and I want you to write them down and take a minute. What are your top 3 things that take the most time? Then, once I identified those 3 things, I looked at ways I could automate each of them. So for me personally, it was number 1, Facebook messages. I would get hundreds a day, and frankly, I hated it. So I decided I would specifically use Facebook Messenger to communicate with my host and my guests, and I would use email with my personal team. I then implemented using an email system with my team for communication. Number 2 for me was onboarding new consultants. I was spending an hour and a half at a minimum with each new consultant. How much time does your system take per consultant? This for me included sending welcome emails, doing Zoom calls, sending up some follow-up emails with linked resources for our team resources. I automated this into a system that now takes no more than 20 minutes per new consultant, if that. This system needs to be so buttoned up that you can give it to your fresh consultant who just recruited their 2nd or 3rd recruit, and they could run with it. Heck, they could even run with it with their first recruit. We simply cannot be asking new consultants who are recruiting at a fast pace and right away to spend an hour or more with each new consultant. The 3rd thing for me was director bound. I was spending an hour and a half per week at least on Director Bound, not including any of my one-on-one coaching time with my participants in that program. That included setup, follow-up, time of doing the live calls, etc. So I changed this to more of an automated system where instead of me being on live for the calls, I pre-recorded the calls and I removed the live segment. One example that I experienced with automating with our Director Bound is that instead of spending all that time on the calls where I was saying the same thing over and over, call one was always the same material every time, I automated it and it freed up time for me to start and create a new program that was desperately needed. The new program is Senior Director Bound and Executive Director Bound program that helps directors work through the career plan, which was a gap we had and it was a missing system. But because I automated one system, it freed up time to create a new system where one was needed. So now that we've talked about some ways to automate, I want to share some ideas on how to be consistent and disciplined to execute effectively. Oftentimes, that starts with how you manage your time. So in order to be extremely effective with time management and accomplishing tasks, I went on a time blocking kick a few years ago. I watched some YouTube videos on how to time block so I knew where to start and implemented it right away. Literally every 30-minute section of my entire day would be blocked out with exactly what I was going to do. From when I would eat, to when I would shower, to when I responded to messages, when I did Director Bound, when I did new consultant onboarding, every 30 minutes was assigned. This enabled me to be hyper-focused on really being efficient with my time. I did this to a T for at least 3 weeks to get in the habit. And then as I got in the habit of doing it, I found I didn't need to be as prescribed with my time and I would naturally follow with blocking my time out. I really encourage this, you guys, for anyone that struggles with feeling like they don't have enough time in the day, or you feel unproductive, or you feel you want to buckle down and get serious about really being efficient with your time. You can see an example on the slide that I have blocked out time for even family time, when I'm working, when I'm not. There's also some time slots that aren't filled in. Those slots would be filled in the day before when I made my to-do list for the next day. That way I knew exactly what I need to work on and when I was going to do it. Of course, some weeks would change and shift, but this gives you an idea at least. So as we get ready to wrap up, I want to share some tips on being disciplined to do the work that we need to do. I had to show up on days I didn't want to show up. If I wasn't feeling like it, I had to do it anyways. If I wanted to take a nap to avoid the work, I love naps, you guys. I had to do it anyways. I couldn't take a nap. The results will not come if we don't show up and do the work. So first tip, I set very clear and big personal goals. My husband and I talked about what we want for the next few years, and we have a goal to pay off our mortgage by next spring. We live in the third most expensive real estate market in the nation, so that is a lofty, big goal. I literally sat down and wrote out exactly how much I wanted to use of my Pampered Chef income to pay off our mortgage each month. I keep this tracker in front of me every day at my desk. I have to perform in my business to achieve this goal. And when we achieve this goal, we have even bigger goals lined up and ready to go. Set goals for yourself. You have to find ways to intrinsically motivate yourself. Because if the extrinsic motivating factors become less compelling for you, or if they decrease, your intrinsic motivation that comes from within you, that has to be strong to keep you going. I also find for me personally, when my mind, body, and health are all aligned, I am way more efficient. So what I mean by that is if I'm feeling complete and healthy mentally, emotionally, and physically, I will perform at my highest potential in everything I do. If my outputs and results are not where I want them to be, it is likely because my mindset is off, or if my emotional well-being is not right, or if I haven't taken care of my body with the things I need to do to feel good physically. This is so important to running at peak performance in our business. It also allows us to show up in the best way possible we can, not only for our team and for our directors, but for our family and our spouses as well. Align your mind, your body, and your health for peak performance. I want to end with a quick story. At Chairman's Circle in January, I had a personal defining moment. We were talking about goals, and while I always set large, lofty goals, I hadn't felt up to that point that I had defined my legacy and my purpose. For some reason, something clicked at that moment in time, and it came to me. I wanted to be able to give back to the community in a reversed role. So when I started Pampered Chef, I ran the Parks and Recreation Department for our city. I was like the Leslie Nopes of Park and Recreation, you guys. My favorite thing to do was to write grants and seek out funds to build parks, playgrounds, and splash pads that we couldn't afford. But I knew that our community desperately needed more areas to recreate, and that if I could fund it outside of our budget, we could make it happen. Which in many cases, funding was secured and we were able to do a lot of park development projects. I share this with you because now it is my time to give back. It's my turn to be writing checks to fund the projects the cities want to do, to create new parks, to create new open spaces for communities that can't afford to do it without community and donor support. So what does that look like for you guys? What is your legacy going to be? I challenge you to dig deep and figure out what that is, because that is going to be your guiding star that keeps you going in your business. So to bring it full circle, even back from what I shared at Empower this spring, remember what Ed Milet says. If you don't sacrifice for what you want becomes the sacrifice. Don't let your legacy be the sacrifice.
Ooh, Kristen, the tissues are everywhere. When we rehearsed. Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, that's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Doreen, do we have time for some questions?
I think so. And there are actually, first of all, there are lots of comments. Kristen, I know we'll get them to you in the chat later. So many people being touched by what you said. But two questions. One was very curious. They wanted to know, do you have any kind of connection with your downline leaders? Probably the thinking is to cover possible roll-up if a first-gen leaves. So kind of wanted to understand a little more about that.
Yes. So I have a few systems in place. So if you look at my system slide, it talks about like just director support in general. So I have a monthly director meeting. All directors in our org, even below third gen, are invited to attend. Their directors are the ones that would invite them. I also do a weekly call. And so this is where I have directors that can come to a small group support call. I have upper levels, advanced, that could come to a small group call, and then senior directors. So they're invited to attend that to get support, but it is a group thing. It is not one-on-one. And that's where I can grow and scale that, because I can have as many come to that, and I'm still spending the same 45 minutes or hour on that call.
Stacia, anything we're going to add to that? We're trying to coordinate here.
Yeah, you're okay. I will add too, I have started sending birthday cards and pampered bursary, I call them pampered bursary cards, to my directors and those in my personal team that have birthdays and anniversaries coming up. And that's a nice little touch. My assistants write out the labels and everything for it, and I handwrite the card. And then we throw it in the mail. So there's still like some little personal touches in there too, even though I'm not doing any one-on-one work with them.
Okay. We've got a great question from Susan in the Q&A too, Doreen. Kristen, talk about how you transitioned your team to not message you and to really embrace that email system, because that's a shift.
I actually thought someone would ask me this question. So it is, I mean, when you have a way of doing it for so long and then you're changing it, you're changing their pattern of behavior, right? So I set the expectation up front with my new consultants, how they should communicate with me. And it was email. And I set up a separate email. It was like wearingateam@gmail.com. And it was just my team email inbox. So I could keep it really clean and I could get back to them within 24 hours, usually same day. So I did that, but then my existing team, I needed to set that expectation with them, and they weren't used to that. And so what I did was I did a post on our team page, and I basically said, you guys, I'm here to serve you, and I want so badly to be able to respond to you right away. And right now my messages are out of control from every, like for my host and my guests and you guys. I love you, I want to support you, and I just can't get back to you as fast as I want to, and I want to be able to provide good service to you. So in order to do that, I would ask that please send me an email with anything that you need. You need to ask me a question or whatever. And they accepted that, and they did not mind. And I did have to gently remind sometimes in a message, if they sent me a message, I just said, hey, send me an email, here's the email, and I'll get back to you, as soon as I can. So I did gently remind them and redirect them back to the email. I did not respond in message answering their question, because that would reinforce the behavior and the habit to message me. And what I also found is the amount of requests I got from my team, like questions or whatever they were sending me, decreased drastically, because it's harder. It takes more time, takes more effort to send an email than it does to just shoot up a quick message. So that's kind of how I made that transition.
Karina's got a follow-up question to that as well. You're helping your team learn to recruit, working with new consultants, you're sending screenshots back and forth. Are you having them attach those in an email as well?
Yes. I will say, on rare occasion, if there's someone that's like really hot to trot, and I'm like, dude, this person's on fire, I really need to be all over this, I will actually like give them permission to message me. So I will say, like, you have a lot of screenshots going on. This is amazing. I know I usually want you guys to send me an email, but with all these screenshots, you have permission to my inbox. You can message me your screenshots. However, this is totally a different training for a different day. I am of the mind that I want to empower and train and teach my consultants to come up with their own wording, and we are moving away from screenshots. I really want them to learn and develop the skill to come up with the wording themselves. And so because we've made that transition, and we've done a lot of skill building around coming up with words to say, the screenshots have drastically reduced as well, and they're signing recruits on their own oftentimes without sending a lot of screenshots. So
that's awesome. I love the skill building that you're empowering your team members from the start, which is incredible and lightens your load as a leader as well. One last question from Erin, and just on a high level, Kristen, in your automation segment, you talked about automating your director bound so that you could focus on senior director and executive bound systems. When you were doing that, can you maybe just give some tips on where to start in developing their own systems for those programs?
Yes, and this is what I share with my directors too, is think about your existing like director bound system, right? Maybe you have like call 1, call 2, call 3, or however you have it organized some way. So what I did for this is I had call 1, 2, 3, I had 4 calls. I took call 1, and whatever information I was providing on that call, I basically kind of condensed it into a 15-minute video. And I took the real high level stuff that they needed to pull away from that call. And I made bullet points. I'm like, okay, here's what I need to talk about. And you already talk about it anyways. You train on it for 30 minutes or an hour in director bound. So, and for me, it was 30-minute calls. So it was easier to go down to a 15-minute video. And then I just made a video for that. I made a video for it, and then I created a challenge for them. So I put it into a Post My Party outline, much like a party. It's like this came from Megan Mituszewski. Shout out Megan, she's one of our executives. It's like a director bound boot camp, and it's 5 days long. They get a video in the morning for 15 minutes, and they get a challenge they have to do. And the challenge is implementing something they learned from the video. Like, go take action, go do this thing. If they don't watch the video and they don't watch the challenge, they get kicked out. So, and we run 2 a month. So I can run one the first week of the month, and I can run one the third week of the month. So anyone who signed those first 2 weeks of the month, they can get in director bound right away.
Love that. Kristen, I wish we could continue to go on. I just thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and inspiring us to be more disciplined and to take action today. You've really capped off this segment beautifully. So thank you so much for spending time with us and for